Hey, bluukjazzdance. I'm going to talk on an important story. I'm going to talk about it orally. Colin Curtis from Rhodesia, his promotional team run by Jan Crow called Freestyling, and two photographers sabotage my international investment. I came back to Manchester to invest in 5 years at university to get the skills to develop a international show people. Yeah? And that show originally was called Rebirth of the Cool, and part of it was a tribute to John Bubbles. What I wanted to show the world was my bohemian life and style. I wanted to show them each dancer in the UK who was a pioneer had his own style. So I created a show. That was the whole idea what happened. A definitive book had been written by a gentleman called Snowboy, and I was written out of that book at a key time I was coming to promote myself internationally. So I had to hold up my program, and I went to see Snowboy to ascertain how this happened. Boom, boom, boom. Anyway, cut long story short, he told me they didn't have the cultural heritage. I realised a lot of people have been left out of the book. It wasn't only me. And that was important. At that meeting with him, I said, let me help you broaden the cultural heritage. Because what happened is the book has strengths, weaknesses, and threats. From you don't have the cultural heritage, you've just perpetuated another stereotypical book about blacks being involved in dance in Britain. This wasn't his intention. But what happens if you're not political? Because one of the things I will talk about, Snowboy has political naivety. I'm in the arts. I'm a qualified H&C, European Arts Management, administrator, manager with business management focus. Snowboy is politically naive, and many people on the commercial industries of UK jazz dance or in the UK jazz culture are politically unaware of the significance of what dance means in the world, because it was dissed as a fad. It wasn't even seen as a dance. You need to understand, it wasn't given a label like freestyling on by a majority of people. Only the Edge organization, who did the first dance competition in 1981, they started to give it some credence because they saw that it was a free form, freestyle, improvisational, experimental art form, as well as being a social dance with a social role to the culture that created it. Many people are politically unaware people. What happened was, Snowboy said to me he didn't want to come to Manchester if he stepped on the toes of Colin Curtis in Manchester. So he wanted me to find a way to work alongside Colin Curtis, which I wasn't going to work with. I didn't think I'd work with him. I didn't need to. So I did. I come back to Manchester. There was the revival now of Black Renaissance music. So there was no way I could get in anywhere to develop anything without stepping on anybody's toes. So I went to see Colin Curtis after Snowboy had emailed him saying this is what I wanted to do and tried to open up doors. He tried to open doors to Oligopolis people. Oligopolis has been part of one of the destructions of this art form in the beginning. And that happened in '86 when we lost the northern scene overnight. It was lost because of Oligopolis. People tried to put it down to the social problems that brought crime, brought violence. No. What happened from the beginning, there was black door policies. What happened from the beginning, we were facing inequalities in every part of society. So what do you think that led to? Some people getting involved in crime. And we not having an involvement in the dance scene that we created in the clubs as promoters, as DJs, as anything. I was involved on the underground, in dancehall. I never had to worry about dancing anywhere like those in the commercial industry, because I was pushing myself commercially in the black underground commercial industries, you understand, which was underground then, and was like Chitlin circuits. We had our own places, venues that we went, and that's what I used, dancehall. And we eventually, my brother, who was a DJ himself, he got a residency in town because we were very well socialized. So we bypassed some of the blocks the Ligopolis were putting up in the city centre. Yeah, for our charisma, for our character. The point I'm coming to, my international investment was sabotaged because I told Colin Curtis's promoter, I'm doing a project on the lifestyle. I've kept my clothes hidden. I'm going to do a photographic shoot. I'm going to have an exhibition. I want to involve Colin Curtis and their organisation. She says, cool. But what happens is underhanded things took place. One, a photographer works for them, sold my photographs on the web. I caught him and I still worked with them because I realised it wasn't their fault. He just got overzealous because vintage was around and he knew that I had been big. Big in what? I was big from the new tapping into the new events that had come into Manchester, which is called Mixed Movement in 2011. I'd gone there after being in Mixed Movement Festival in 2011 and 2010 Black Sound series that raised the prestige of Manchester's UK jazz dance fashion and the dancing, because I showed him the brochure. He got overzealous, greedy, and what he did, he sold my photographs unknown to Jan Crow. Boom, boom, boom. Cut a long story short, I cut that down. Boom, and I still worked alongside Jan Crow because I knew she was involved in it. Next minute, what happens is, because they have to sack that photographer, a new photographer comes on the scene. They let this guy come to the club and take photographs of me and other people in the club. They don't tell me, that this photographer is not working for them. I assume he's working for them. Later on, next time I go back to the club, they tell me he's not working for them. And I realise they did something underhanded because they wanted to get photographs. They had to get rid of the last photographer. So having me aboard now, it cost them. They didn't care about ethics. I'd cost them a photographer who'd worked with them because they knew if I spoke out about the incident, it would be bad sham. A bad thing. Because I was known and I was popular on the scene. Cut a long story short, what happens is Jan Crow comes to me, tells me about the photographer who's coming to the club to take photographs. He wants to work with me as a way to get my photographs. I say I work alongside him, and contact him. I don't hear nothing back from him. Then what happens is 2013, Jan Crow calls me to the table, tells me Colin Curtis no longer wants to involve himself in the project I was doing with them. Already started, people. 2011. Me allowing them to use my photographs in all their publicity any way they wanted, in a sense of context of respectful use. But I get access to the photographs and the photographs are not sold because I want to use them for an exhibition. She tells me no longer can I get access to any photographs that have been taken. I look at her and tell her about your organisation lacks integrity. Then what happens from there is, as I'm leaving, Colin must get wind of it, comes in the toilet and tries to intimidate me in the toilet, breaching zero tolerance. I look at him ashamed, and I've already said it on another interview. I was ashamed of you. I was ashamed of him because I knew he did this deliberately. Because what you need to do, I'd come popular on the scene, in the clubs, people, in the theatre, in the arts, huge, for bringing back UK jazz dance, because I was the last and the longest pioneer in Manchester and one of them in Britain who's an established dancer with his own pioneering styles. Not 1, 5, 6, 7 styles, pushing the boundaries. And I'd come back now with all my knowledge from university, okay, with all my knowledge of research, because what I did pilots about how I could develop my UK jazz dancing, and the answer came in decibels. Decibels came around in 2003. All the black artists, African diaspora artists in Britain, had an opportunity to promote their work in Manchester. Manchester Theatre's 2 leading promoters around the world. Why was this done? Because Britain, UK had done us a disservice. They never gave us access to the distributors around the world for theatre programming. So they brought them, the programmers from around the world, to Manchester and told the artists to come and present their work. If I knew then, I didn't know about decibels because I had taken my way from the arts and gone into business, and I kept my focus then. And I found about the festival and I went to it. There I got a coach, established a great woman, and she's been my coach from 2010 2003 to presently, a mentor who was big in London. She enabled me to shadow her. You have to understand the industry today. 5% of black and Asian minority groups are involved in the creative industries today. You have to understand, not till 1981 did black Asian minority group get a look into the national arts development. How that all happened was because of the riots of 81. Britain had to change, the UK to change its policies to be more inclusive. The culmination of the 1958 riots culminated in 81. Racism at the core in every area, inequalities, defranchisement of youth, of all black Asian minority groups was identified. So they had to now develop programs in the arts. But what happened was we were doing a disservice because we weren't showing business skills. That's why I had to go back to university. We were trained as community artists, and community artists were trained to live as paupers. We were already living as paupers. So what happened was many of our artists had to leave Manchester to make money. Guy called Gerald, you know, most of our artists, Lem Cisse, because there's lack of opportunities in Manchester in leadership positions for black and Asian minority groups. If you look up who's running centres, historically, we've not had a look in as leaders in sense of sustainability. It's always been short term. So our best left. Our best elders left in 1950 because of the discriminations taking place. That's what happened. They had to go to London. And when they couldn't get work in London in the 1950s, they left. And some retired. Some continued to do cultural groups. In Manchester, amazing key Afro-Cubists, Thomas Olajide Ojueso, Kwasi Asari, Tafa Oni Banjo, Sam Nelson. These individuals were drummers who brought back African music into drumming, because 1950s, the door colonial countries gained the opportunity to come to Britain to get work, and people came here because it offered them an opportunity. bluukjazzdance wanted to build his opportunity to do an international program, an international production around them teachers, etc., etc., and it was sabotaged. It was sabotaged by Colin Curtis. It was sabotaged by his promotional company, and it was sabotaged by the photographers that they worked with, and I kept silent about it. Now it's in my legacy, and it's going to be my story. Because what happened was, I raised my prestige internationally, and it was destroyed by them because they didn't want me to have no work locally. They didn't want me to have no work regionally. Don't have no work nationally or internationally, because they're international. Because where the number one scope for UK jazz dance now internationally is in Japan. Do you understand? And Europe. So you'll see the guys involved in the commercial industries are all involved in oligopolies, are involved in what's the status quo, the silence of the cover-up of the lack of inclusion, the lack of equality, the lack of diversity. People now are working together to block me, bluukjazzdance, from having an international focus. I'm just glad I archived my footage. I'm glad for the web. You need to understand, people, what I'm about to expose in my legacy. If we never had Facebook, if we never had YouTube, you would never know about my achievement that people are covering up locally, regionally, internationally. I was writing out the definitive book, and I started to think about myself, and others have been writing out the book. My biggest concern in context of the book, because I'm about to review it, I was in London during the key time that Snowboy was writing between 2009, and not one person told me about that book. I'm about to write the concerns. I'm about to give you some speculations about North-South divide, about the biases, and how the biases from a long time ago have diminished the amazing talent of the North. from the south. And I'm going to talk to you very simply in context. Go and look up Bellevue. Manchester was around from the latter stage of the 1800s. It was the first leisure entertainment place in history of its size. No place, not even London, had what you had for leisure and entertainment. But you don't know of it in history. It's the hidden history. How can it be? Because the north-south divide. Blue UK Jazz Dance, over and out.